I live in Washington, but I used to live with my parents in a remote rural home before this happened. It was around 20 minutes from the nearest town. The closest neighbors in each direction were around half a mile away. I grew up in this house and got used to its isolated nature, so I wasn't nervous while at home. However, I experienced a terrifying situation while living there when I was 14. It was spring break, and my parents had planned a trip to Florida. They were supposed to leave for the airport on Sunday morning. Something, however, happened at my dad's workplace, and they had to cancel the trip. To make up for that, my parents took me to a wonder park on Sunday. It was fun, but I was still disappointed that the trip had to be canceled. We were there for 5 hours before we saw a powerful storm heading our way. Everyone got out of the pool and got away from the park. The storm had wholly come down on us by the time we got home. The rain was intense, and there was frequent thunder and lightning. Suddenly, things started getting strange. We pulled into the driveway and noticed the garage was wide open. My dad assumed he forgot to shut it when we left. Mum assured us the garage was fully closed before our way out. We all got out and went inside. My parents sat on the couch and started watching the television, while I went to my room upstairs. The rain was coming down so loud. It was filling the entire house with round, rambling sounds. Halfway through the stairs, I heard something moving through the hallway. I quickly climbed the stairs to see whether it was an animal or something. There was nothing, although I noticed that my bedroom lights were on. It was weird since I hadn't turned them on today. At that point, I just assumed there were some wiring problems or any of my parents had left them on. I was scared. I stood in the hallway for a while before moving over to the door. I stood outside my bedroom to ensure it was safe before entering. Seconds passed before I heard a faint shuffling sound from my room. I opened the door, expecting to see something like a small rodent moving around. I didn't see anything, and the room looked untouched. I closed the door behind me. I checked under the bed and still saw nothing. I got up and sat on my bed while thinking how strange all this was. A shadow quickly moved across the bottom of my bedroom door from out of the hallway. My heart skipped a beat, feeling terrified that the shadow looked like someone's. I got up on the bed, thinking what to do since I was trapped in my bedroom and couldn't run outside. I texted my dad downstairs that someone was upstairs. I could hear him coming quickly upstairs after my phone showed that he had read the text. I was nervous as the footsteps kept moving closer to my bedroom. My dad immediately opened the door and looked concerned. I told him what I had just seen. He could see the fear in me, and we both went downstairs. He heard a loud thud coming from upstairs when we got to the bottom of the stairs. The thud was followed by running footsteps down the hall. We ran into the living room, and my dad picked up a small bag lying in the corner, probably to get the gun. The footsteps splinted down the stairs, and we heard the front door open as someone ran out of the house. We looked through the door and saw a man running away. My dad called the police, but they came an hour later because of our house's interior location. They checked around before leaving. They never found the man, but we felt that he knew we were going for a vacation that Sunday morning. I rarely go on road trips because I use flights when I need to travel far. Due to the short notice of a family member's death, I had to drive for about 10 hours to get to my cousin's house. I parked enough stuff to last a week because I didn't know how long I would be away. I began my road trip the next day around 10 in the morning. It seemed like 5 to 6 years since I last drove this far, but I felt I would drive there the same day without staying at a hotel. An hour after I started my drive, a storm cloud was forming in the sky. Soon, I was driving through heavy rain and thunder. I was driving on a road lined with forests. Some sections of the road were on a valley where rainwater would flow into the road because there wasn't a drainage system. I had to slow down and drive cautiously to ensure I didn't slip off the road or get caught in flooded sections. The drive took much longer than I thought. I still had hours to drive after driving for 3 hours. The sun was rising, and I felt exhausted after driving overnight in the rain. I needed some rest before continuing with my drive. It took about 45 minutes of struggling to stay awake before I came to a small town where I could pull over and rest. I drove around the town, which didn't have more than 20 buildings, to see whether I could find a motel. I didn't find any. I found a small parking lot by a local grocery shop. I parked far at the corner. The town was quiet, with no lights other than a few street lights. No cars were on the road, and the entire place looked creepy. I locked my car and looked around for a few minutes before leaning back and closing my eyes. I woke to the banging sound of heavy rain on my car. I looked around and noticed the car park was much darker than when I got there. From the distance, I could make a figure coming towards my car. I looked at them, waiting for them to turn around or go somewhere else. But the closer they got, the more apparent they were heading for me. I could tell it was a man when they got around 20 feet away. It was weird because he didn't seem bothered by the heavy rain. I noticed he wasn't holding anything, so I wasn't worried about him breaking into my car. He started walking towards the back door. The man never tried to open or break the door. He put his hands flat on it and tried to push away my car as if he was trying to knock it over. I didn't know how best to react. I thought he was crazy. I put the key into the ignition to start the car. I switched on the headlights to warn him that I was in the car, and I could see all he was up to. The guy did not even flinch. He continued to push the vehicle relentlessly. I had enough of it and backed out. The men followed the car a few steps, but finally gave up. He watched me drive out of the park. He started walking back towards where he came from. I didn't stop for the rest of the drive to my cousin's house. I worked the night shift at a medium-sized restaurant in my town. My job was to stand at the front counter and attend to customers who were checking in and out. Barely anyone would go in and out of the lobby at night. I would stay there overnight, just checking the doors. There is one night in particular that still stands out to me. It was a normal night, and I was standing at the front desk. There was a heavy rainstorm. Usually nobody would go in or out of the hotel when it's raining or when there is bad weather. I pulled my phone out to pass time. A man showed up at the entrance door a few minutes later. He walked through the first set of doors and then stopped, standing in the area between the two sets of doors. He gazed through the glass, looking around the inside of the building, and then made eye contact with me. He awkwardly patted his pockets before walking back out into the rain. It was weird, to be honest, but I had worked in that hotel long enough and met lots of people. So, I'm used to such awkward and strange behavior. I thought the man had forgotten something in his car and had to get it back. He didn't have a suitcase or bag, so I assumed he already had a room. A minute went by before the phone at the front desk rang. The caller ID showed it was an outside number, and I knew it wasn't someone who was in one of the hotel rooms. I picked it up and said the casual hotel introduction and asked how I could help them. The caller was a man who said he was outside the hotel and needed someone to help him bring in his luggage. I told him those who could have helped him had left at 9. He said it was okay and asked me if I could come out in the open, saying that he just needed me to roll in a small suitcase. It was a weird request. I told him I could help him if he brought his car closer to the door. He said it was okay with him. I got up from my desk and waited for him at the entrance. I stood there for around 5 minutes before getting impatient. I waited outside as I saw the guy from earlier walking around in the parking, waving at me and beckoning me to come over. The rainstorm outside was picking up. I wondered why the man wanted me to go into the rain while he could move his car closer to the building. I ignored him and returned to my desk. The man came just as I was seated. He must have sprinted across the car park to get there that quickly. He came to the lobby and went straight to me, breathing heavily. Getting a bit impatient, he asked me to go help him bring in his suitcase. I responded by telling him to pull the car over to the front. He told me he had already taken his luggage out of the car, and he didn't want to put it back. I had a bad feeling about the man. I asked him whether he had checked in before I could accord him further assistance. He immediately got angry when I asked him that question and demanded I go help him before his luggage got too wet outside. I was getting impatient and told him he shouldn't have taken his luggage out of the car in the first place. I asked him to leave the hotel if he wasn't checking in. He got out angry, showing me the middle finger on his way out. He never returned that night. What creeps me is that the guy wasn't a client and was only trying to lure me into his car in the middle of a rainy night.